Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Sahar. I'm a 1L at the University of Illinois Urbana, Champaign, and I would love to have you as a subscriber. I will also link my social media down below if you would like to follow me elsewhere. Today's video is kind of a law school starter pack. I've kind of picked out things that most people tend to have questions about when it comes to law school, like cold calls, finals, outlining, all of that, and I'm just going to share what they are, any advice and tips that I have, and this is kind of to serve as your one-stop shop for things that you should probably know before going to law school and things that you probably already have questions about. I hope this video is helpful, and with that, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is cold calls. Now, these are terrifying when you first start out law school. I'm not even going to tell you to remain calm because I know no matter what I say, people will stress about cold calls. That's just how it is. So many people told me that they don't matter. I shouldn't worry about them. They are super chill. And I was still stressed out. No matter how many times I heard it, I was still nervous about them. So, you know what? If you're nervous, that's okay. That's a perfectly normal feeling, but I will still tell you cold calls do not matter. Well, I don't want to say they completely don't matter. Like if you just didn't do the reading and your professor notices, that's not a good sign. But if you did the reading and you're able to at least formulate some sort of answer that shows I did the reading, I just don't know the answer to this question, that's fine. And if you don't know the answer, literally just say, sorry, I don't know. Like I've done that so many times if I just didn't know the answer. There's so many cold calls that I've completely bombed, and it's just, you do it and you move on and no one thinks about it again. Literally, I've talked to so many people in my classes and they cannot for the life of them remember any cold calls. Like I don't even remember my own cold calls, so I doubt anyone else is paying attention. So they really aren't something that you need to stress about. The only thing I'll say about them is just to at least try to give an answer, and if you really are stuck, it's okay to just say, I don't know. That is perfectly acceptable. So many people do it, and you're not going to be like the laughing stock of your 1L class if you don't know the answer or if you bomb a cold call. I promise you have a lot more things to be worrying about than cold calls. Trust me, law school is very stressful, very hard, and this part of it is the least of your worries. So don't dwell on a bad cold call. It happens, you just move on, and it'll make for a funny story. Next, I want to talk about readings and kind of briefing cases. I really sucked at briefing my first couple of weeks of school, to be honest. I either put way too much information in my brief or not enough, and I just didn't have the answer when I was cold called. And it's just a matter of kind of trial and error and seeing what works for you. So in law school, a lot of your kind of homework assignments are these daily readings, and you read different cases from your casebook, and what law students do are brief these cases. So we use the IRAC method, which is IRAC, issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. So when you're reading the case, you're looking for those 4 elements, and that is more likely than not what your professor is going to ask you in a cold call, like what was the rule in this case, or how did the court hold, and certain things like that. And so briefs are really helpful to kind of refresh your memory and more quickly answer the questions. And they also help you better understand the case and kind of dissect it. Some cases are very complicated, so it's nice to have some form of like note-taking system like IRAC to help you get through this dense material. In terms of kind of how much reading you have, it's really not what I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to spend every single night reading like 100 pages of reading, and that's why people say law school is a lot of reading. There's a lot of reading. That's not the case. I think on average I had about like 10 pages of reading per doctrinal class, so that was like 30 pages a day. The thing is, the reading that you're doing is very dense. They are judicial opinions. They are not easy to read, and that is what takes you so long. It's not that you're reading 100 pages a night. It's just that you're reading this material that I think I spent an hour reading 10 pages at the beginning of the semester, and it's very time consuming and it's hard. It's like you're learning a completely new language, and your mind will adjust by the end of the semester. I promise you. In the beginning, it's going to seem impossible. It'll seem like you don't understand what you're reading, and it's just overall a very difficult kind of learning process, but it does get easier. I highly recommend purchasing Quimby if your school does not provide it. Quimby is just this subscription service that gives you access to thousands of cases and gives you case briefs. So what I used to do was I would read the case and do my own case brief, and then I would go onto Quimby and look up the case, and 9 out of 10 times they had this animated like video. It was like 4 or 5 minutes, and I would just watch that, and it gives you the simplest and most straightforward overview of what the case was about. It tells you the issue, the rule, the analysis, and the conclusion, and it was just such a helpful service. So I really recommend it. I know some schools provide it. Mine unfortunately did not, but I think it's definitely worth the investment. That's kind of what readings are, what briefing cases are. I think by the end of the semester, some people switch to book briefing, which basically means instead of like typing your IRAC, you just kind of highlight throughout the case, and this really requires some active reading because I know some days I was reading the cases in book briefing, and then when it came to class, I did not remember anything of what the case was about. So while it does save you time because you're not like typing everything out, it does require a lot more focus and a lot more attention. Next, let's talk about finals. Law school finals are hard, of course, but there are certain things that you should probably keep in mind about finals. So first, a lot of the time I get asked what is on a law school final, and I didn't want to make this video and answer this question until like I really knew myself after going through finals, but you'll have different types of law school finals just depending on the class, the professor, and all of that. But all of my classes were half multiple choice and half essay. So multiple choice, pretty straightforward. They give you a question, you pick from the 4 or 5 choices, and you bubble them into a Scantron. At least that's how it was in my school, and that's it. Multiple choice is pretty straightforward. The questions that they ask in multiple choice can vary. Some of them asked very standard, like almost definition questions. Some of them were like paragraph issue spotters, and then they would ask you about like a particular issue in the little paragraph. So it just varies, again, depending on class, professor, all of that. The 2 essays that at least I was exposed to, if there are more, please let me know down below. But the first one is issue spotters. This basically means that your professor will give you a problem, and it could be like a couple paragraphs, it could be a couple pages, and it basically tells you this whole story or this whole situation. So it'll tell you, here are the people involved, X hit Y, and then Y went and did this, and then this happened, and it tells you the consequences of all the actions, and it's your job to spot all of the issues that you could bring. And by that, I mean, let's say we are in the world of torts, and you see X punched Y, then you can bring up the claim of battery, and that is an issue that you have spotted, and you will talk about battery and explain what it is and how you got there, and the balancing kind of how it is a battery, how it could not be a battery, and that is one issue done. And you will find several issues in this kind of long paragraph form, and that's essentially what an issue spotter is. So how well can you analyze the issue and how many issues you can spot is typically how you are graded. So the more issues you spot, the better off you'll probably be, and the better, more meaty your analysis is, probably the more points that you will get as well. So that is kind of what an issue spotter is. And then we have a policy essay, which is what my property class was, and I did not like policy essays at all. I don't really, like, my mind doesn't really work in a policy way, so this was really, really hard for me. But essentially, policy essays are very, very broad. They can range from a lot of different topics and a lot of different ways the professor can ask the question. So it could be something about a concept that we learned in class and how it applies to other concepts throughout the class, or how a certain change in a rule would affect society, and what are the policy implications of changing this rule. So there are things like that where you really kind of get to be creative, which I did enjoy, but you have to think outside of the box. In my property class, we talked a lot about policy during class, and our professor said that that's only going to get you like a B answer because everyone has access to those notes. Everyone was in class listening to the policy implications of certain topics, but what really makes you stand out is where you go above and beyond and where you think about different effects of changes and how certain concepts tie in with each other, and just making these connections that you don't just make in class. And so that's why I didn't really like policy questions, because I can practice issue spotters, and the more you practice them, the better you get at them, the better and quicker you are at spotting issues and explaining them and all of that. But with policy essays, there's just so much that can be asked that there was no way for me to like study it or practice it. It was just a matter of kind of jumping in and hoping you get something that you will understand and be able to explain. So I didn't really love policy essays, but those are a type of essay that could show up on your law school exam. Another thing about finals that I will say is a consistent study routine throughout the semester is significantly more beneficial than cramming everything during Thanksgiving break and reading week and all of that, because there is just so much information you learn. Like, you are literally learning an entire area of law in 4 months. So there's a lot. There's a lot that goes on. You learn a lot more than you probably thought. And it's just very, very difficult to get a really good understanding of everything if you're cramming it 2 weeks before the exam. It's also very, very stressful, and law school finals are already so stressful. The whole law school environment and culture is built around stress. So why would you want to add more to that? So studying throughout the semester, literally what I would do is review every Saturday morning. I would just review my notes from the week and make sure I had an understanding of everything, because a lot of classes will build on top of each other and will build on top of topics that you learn in like the first couple of weeks. And so if you just never reviewed, you're probably going to be more likely lost in later chapters, later units, and it's just going to build up at the end of the semester and your mind's gonna explode. So don't do that. Study consistently, have a routine for yourself, stick to it. A lot of law school is just about self-discipline. I think that is like the biggest thing. If I could give you like one piece of advice or one skill that you should develop before going to law school, it's self-discipline. I think that is something that really, really benefited me, and maybe I did well on my finals, maybe I didn't, I still don't know, but I am still really, really glad that I was not overwhelmed during final season, because I practiced self-discipline throughout the semester and it just really, really paid off, at least in terms of my mental health. So have a routine, have a consistent study routine, study throughout the semester, and finals will be fine. And then the last thing I want to chat about is outlining. So you hear about outlining all the time. You need outline, 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 outline. But what the heck is outlining? That's what my question was before coming to law school. I would see so many like how to study for finals videos, and it would just be outline and all of that, and I didn't understand what an outline was. But essentially what it is just a large study guide of everything you learned throughout the semester. So at least this is how I formatted it. I opened up a Word doc and I went into the syllabus for that class, looked at every single unit or topic that we discussed, and that was kind of my subheadings. And under it, I would have all of the key takeaways, the rules, the examples, everything that I felt like was the most important from my class notes, I would transfer over to my outline. And the reason that this is such a great study tool is, one, you're constantly reviewing the material. If you have to go back to the first day of class to pull information for your first section in your outline, you're going to be actively refreshing your memory for those beginning units that you probably haven't looked at in a while, unless you've been studying consistently. But it's still really, really helpful. You're constantly going through the same material over and over again. and it really helps memorize the material because a lot of exams are open book. However, you don't have time to go through your outline and refer to your outline for every single question. You just don't. Law school exams are a time crunch, and I think I maybe had time to look for like a couple of questions on my criminal law exam, and with property I had a lot more time. He was very, very generous, so I did have time to go through just to double check. But still, like, you do not want to be flipping through pages to answer every single question that you get on an exam because you will not finish. I guarantee it, you will not finish the exam. So by creating the outline, you are kind of memorizing the material, and reviewing your outline constantly, reading through it is very, very helpful for that same reason. And one thing that I also did was I rewrote or retyped all of my outlines. So for all my doctrinal classes, I spent Thanksgiving break and the week before finals rewriting them. So I would pick one day where I would sit down and I retype my entire crim law outline. And this helped so much because I had been outlining throughout the semester. So my outlines were all up to date during Thanksgiving break. But the issue was I hadn't reviewed a lot of the material from, again, the first half of the semester, the first half of the course in a very, very long time because I started outlining earlier. So by retyping my entire outline, again, it was a really, really good review, a really good refresher, and it was more active than just reading through this Word document. So I really recommend retyping your outlines. It is time consuming, but it was seriously so beneficial, a lot more than I had anticipated. So that's definitely a unique tip, I guess, that I have with regards to outlining. And the last kind of thing with that I want to say is a lot of people ask when they should start outlining, and I really don't think that you need to start like from the first week because you just don't have information. Like, you just don't know enough about the course. You haven't really learned much to begin outlining. I think personally, I started about a month into school, and still I feel like that was like a little early, but I just really wanted to get ahead of the game. But I think at the earliest, 1 month of information is enough to get you kind of started. I really don't recommend starting your outline during Thanksgiving break. I think you should aim to have finished your outlines by Thanksgiving break. I know a lot of people try to finish them by the end of break, but I really recommend you strive towards finishing it like before break starts or within the first couple of days, because I think Thanksgiving break is a really, really great opportunity to start reviewing your outline and really get ahead of the game for finals. So I was done with all my outlines before Thanksgiving break, and I spent break either rewriting them or taking practice tests or just making flashcards or rereading my outlines and just doing things that felt more like studying rather than preparing my materials to study. So that is the last thing that I will say on outlining. And yeah, with that, that is all of the topics that I had to discuss for this video. I really, really hope this was helpful. If you have any other questions whatsoever, feel free to leave them down below. You can also shoot me an email or DM me on Instagram. Everything will be linked down below. I really don't mind answering any of your questions, so feel free to reach out, use me as a resource. But with that, that is going to be all for today's video. I hope you guys are having a wonderful morning or night wherever you are, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!